Part 3.
Follow us over on the social medias. It's at Halloween is Forever pretty much everywhere. Or if you want to support the show another way, you can go on your favorite podcatcher app and you can go in and write us a little bit of a review. Give us the maximum amount of stars. We will accept no less stars than that. Go on there, and then you write a little thing underneath that goes, hey, these guys, and then shoot us a DM. I'll send you some fucking stickers in the mail. Go to patreon.com/Halloween is Forever. There's a lot of fun stuff over there. Couple different tiers. For those of you who don't know Sarah, let me summarize. Actress, right? Special effects artist, cosplayer, general horror nerd, dare I say, internet horror personality. Would that be fair to say as well?
Yeah, I have been known to be called that.
You have been referred to that on some occasions. Reanimated nerd on the Instagrams, on the social medias. For those of you who don't follow her, go check out. She always posts a lot of cool stuff and cosplays and fun stuff. You know, if you like the type of nonsense we put on the internet, you're certainly going to like what Sarah does. So we're going to backtrack 1 decade, and we're going to wrap up this evening with your boys' pick. I'm going back to 1973 with a little flick called Torso, directed by, and I did this on purpose, not Dario Argento, not Mario Bava. I'm going with Sergio Martino, you guys, the unsung fucking just hero of the Giallo genre. I'm being dramatic. But he actually has a pretty wildly diverse set of directorial credits. If you go on IMDb and you look up, what's that?
He's made some really good stuff.
He has, and it's really all over the place. I mean, Westerns and Giallo, like that's not that uncommon to see a director that does those two things, but also there's comedies on there. There's pure action movies. There's more like romance type movies. I mean, this guy's kind of directed everything. And to do that, and then to do a movie like Torso, which ultimately the reason I talked about how I really love The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And I kind of joked earlier that I maybe wish I would have picked that one instead. That is perhaps I think definitely a more like artfully done movie, and perhaps even a more purely successful movie in the sense of like what they were trying to accomplish from a filmmaker's perspective. Like it maybe you could argue tells a little bit more intriguing story. You could argue that it's got some more interesting like cinematic some more interesting cinematography. You might even argue that Bird with the Crystal Plumage has more like better performances. But the reason I picked Torso, and I'm like, it sounds like I'm digging myself into a hole, right? But the reason I picked Torso is because I don't think this movie gets the credit it deserves for influencing the slasher genre in general, and ultimately Western horror. Like Torso, I genuinely think of as one of the top 5 most influential movies to like modern horror, and specifically modern Western horror and the slasher genre, which is, you could argue, is the most prolific subgenre in American horror. Like there's just so many things that pop up in this movie that you just see a 1-to-1 connection with what was taken from this movie and then applied to the big tentpole franchises that you think of when you think of horror, you know, US horrors, you know, Halloween and Friday the 13th and that sort of stuff. So we'll get into it a little bit more detail, but like I said, 1973, Sergio Martino's Torso. So this movie is grimy. It is sleazy. It is grimy. It is
titties. 19 seconds in, you get
so many titties in this movie. I mean, it is just like tits and just violence, and just like, it is just a dirty, grimy ass movie.
My first note for this movie is literally 19 seconds in. This is a fucking grindhouse movie. This is a movie that you would have expected to see like in, a block off of Times Square in New York in 1973, 1974, like at a theater where your feet fucking stick to the ground, right? It really, like, it hits the ground running, like you said. First of all, you are literally start off with an orgy photo shoot kind of scenario. You get your classic Italian doll orgy photo shoot, as any self-respecting 70s Italian film should start out with. You just get some people like having you don't know exactly how many people. There's just like, there's boobs, there's butts, there's grabbing, there's groping. There's a lot going on. And it's happening in like some kind of, kind of a hazy fog of horniness. But you also see some dolls, like baby dolls lying around. And you're like, what the fuck is happening here? This is chaotic. I don't trust this movie.
It's not too dissimilar from the scene in Death Game with the threesome in that movie, where it's just like a bunch of skin all over the place, but it's all blurry and like, soft focus.
Well, and like 70s, like, sex scenes, like Italian sex scenes, especially if there's more than two people involved, you're never really sure what type of sex act they're performing. It just seems like they're rubbing each other vigorously, trying to like get like somebody's got a cramp and you got to just rub it out. That's kind of what's happening. It's not very erotic. It's more like, you're trying to start a fire with friction on somebody's body. That's essentially what you're trying to accomplish. So after that whole thing, which you glean very little from, it's just, setting the scene. Like, first of all, that this movie's going to be, sweaty and sexy and grimy and gritty and sleazy. But also it's like, here's something that we're going to call back to later, right? So now you get these students in this art institute, and they're taking this kind of like artsy fartsy class with this professor. And then they're chatting them up after class, talking about art shit. And he's kind of receptive to it, but he's the professor, they're the students, and so they're doing this little like flirty chat about artsy fartsy stuff. And then 7 minutes in, we have our second sex scene, and this one is in the back of a Mini Cooper, the car, which is in and of itself impressive. It's like the most Italian thing I can think of, is like having sex in the back of a tiny little car. But this couple who are banging in the back of this Mini Cooper are getting prowled on. Someone be prowling on them. And you get the first look at the killer at this. So this movie hits the ground fucking running. So you already get the first look of the killer, less than 10 minutes in. And this is one of the things I love the most about this movie is the killer. And specifically, it reminds me of how, and this is what I'm talking about. And this first one, I maybe a little bit more of a stretch than other ones, but like the blandness of this mask and the fact that it took almost no time or effort to put together, but is nonetheless super impactful, just screams Halloween to me, right? It is. I don't even know how to describe what this mask is, because it's not like a balaclava, right?
No,
it's not. It's more like if somebody had a very large, dirty sock and then put it over their head and then cut holes for their face holes in it.
Do you know what it is? It's what? You know how like Spider-Man has like the very shitty early suit that he has?
Yeah. Right.
This is the very shitty early suit version of Frankenstein from Death Race.
Death Race 2000. Yes, you're right. It is a little bit like that because you can see so much of his lips.
I was literally thinking that. I was literally fucking thinking that.
It is. It's not David Carradine, but it gives David Carradine vibes. Yeah, because of the weird like the way it's cut is haphazard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're seeing a little bit too much of his mouth. You're seeing not enough of his eyes. Like it was cut by somebody who didn't like his eyes are pinholes, but his mouth is like overexposed. You know what I mean? It's just, it's haphazard.
Definitely wasn't someone who knew how to use scissors.
No, it's haphazard. It's not this guy's not a criminal mastermind, right? So you know, they think this guy.
He's not a crafty person.
No, and he's not crafty at all. This is not Martha Stewart, right? He's out here creeping on this couple. The guy, you know, is like, oh, we're getting peeped on. So he takes off after the peeper. Who the peeper, the killer is built. And I think this is no coincidence. I think this speaks to the Italian heritage of this movie. The killer, I'm pretty sure, is the inspiration for Waluigi. And like just all gangly arms and legs. Like just imagine Waluigi, the way he runs. It's just super long, gangly limbs. This guy is Waluigi.
I'm not going to kill you.
You know, he's just like peeping on people. And the fact that this in 1973 could have been a young Waluigi is totally feasible. I believe that the timelines match up. In any case, so kills the boyfriend kind of off screen and then strangles the girlfriend. Not that big of a deal. But then the brutalness comes in when he like essentially like reverse spatchcocks this poor girl with a knife, with like a buck knife. And it's just like you get this like, I don't know if it's like a plaster cast or some sort of like prosthetic they do of the woman's torso, the titular torso, and he like cuts her open, and it's like fairly brutal. It's not, I wouldn't say the practical effects are fantastic, but it's just like really overtly violent and grimy.
The practical effects get better as this movie gets, like, as the movie goes on, I noticed. The body looked like a piñata. Like paper mache.
Yeah. It does. It gets, which is the inverse of what you normally see. You normally see like the practical effects like team like kind of shoot their wad early in the movie, and then it maybe gets progressively worse. This is the inverse. Not to say later on everything's perfect, but like it gets better throughout the movie, because this is like the first thing, and it's like, I don't know, who knows? Maybe it was shot out of order. Who knows? But anyway, you get introduced to a billion characters, right? So you get Carol. She's this girl, you know, on campus. She's introduced to this creepy merchant guy in the street who sells, among other things, scarves, which will become important. So he's your first like real red herring. And then you get Daniela, who's talking there's Daniela, there is the woman who was killed the night before is their friend. Her name was Flo. And Daniela, or they come to call her Danny, she's a redhead. She tells Carol, the one brunette, that Flo was killed. She was friends with Flo. Carol's very distraught by this. You get the professor, which I wrote it down later, but I don't have it at this point in my notes. I think his name is it Franz? What's his name?
It's Franz.
It's Franz. Professor Franz. He's talking to this American student, which becomes a key character, named Jane. So this is where I get Jane. We were talking about the last movie. And they're in this church, and they start to get like a little romantic, a little flirty. And you come to learn Jane is this American student studying in Rome. And she has started to develop this relationship
this connection with Professor Franz. You also get these other, like I said, the clandestine meetings start to happen. You start to get this idea that like Carol is sneaking around. You don't necessarily know to what capacity, but like, you know, a bunch of people are doing sexy things behind the scenes that you don't know about. This whole group of young college folks. You get to meet this guy, this like jilted fucking incel guy, who is all about Danny, but she's just not having him. And you come to learn his name is Stefano. And he goes and like picks up a sex worker. He's a real piece of work. Stefano is. She tries to get him all horned up with the promise of Swedish porn, but he's not even Swedish porn can get Stefano over over his hang-ups around Danny. But then the sex worker starts like insulting him, and then he just starts wailing on her. Like I said, he's not a cool guy. She runs out, and you really don't know what his deal is. You just know Stefano, not cool, less than cool
not
guy.
Cool. Basically, every male character in this film is some sort of dangerous sex pest.
Yes. Sex pest. Like everyone. And not even the characters that we're introduced to, just random bystanders on the street are sexual predators. 100% of men. And they actually go so far as to, in at least 2, if not more scenes, have a street scene where they are showing either the actual or internal dialogue of just pedestrians that are men. And they're all like, I wouldn't mind fucking, go. They're just like, they're all disgusting predators. Literally everyone.
It's so like, I mean, and this is further along in the film, but it's in the villa scenes, but it's like this, it's just a group of perverts. And like they're all just
they're like walking in the town square too. And
and like one of them's just like, there's like 8 of them, so that means that there's 8 legs and 8 boobs and 4 butts, and I can't get away. I can't wait to get all of them.
4 sets of buttocks is like the way they translate it. But the thing is, that scene, at least it plays a purpose, because they discover that another person's there. We'll get to it later. But like, yes, this town is absolutely infested by roving bands of perverts. just out in the open, just wandering about. It's chaotic. Carol, again, we get the idea Carol's up to no good. She goes off with these 2 biker guys. When I say bikers, I'm not talking about like Hell's Angels, like American badass biker guys. I'm talking about a couple of twinks on little motorbikes, but that's the Italian equivalent of the Hell's Angels. And the
one guy looks like the lead from Pieces.
He does.
He's got the little fro, and he has the little dirt bike. He's so cool.
They both are riding like little motorbikes, right? And then you get this POV. So Steve, you mentioned we get POV stuff in this movie, but not like, it's not as prominent. But you get like a POV of a guy riding a car, driving around in a little tiny car. All cars are tiny in Italy, right? So they're driving around a little tiny car. We talked about the weird mask the killer wears. One other characteristic thing that he has, there's a couple, one we'll get to in a second, but the other one is he's got gloves, black gloves. You know, you think of the black glove killer, common trope in Giallo, but he's got like almost bikerish type of gloves where they have like an open back to them. So they're very recognizable. They're not just regular black gloves. They're kind of recognizable. They're like, if you cut the fingers off them, they would be they would look very at home on a Streets of Rage character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you cut to this like
Carol has headed with the two bikers to a hippie orgy. Where everyone is just like strung out on the weeds. Like it's imagine an opium den, but it's weed. That's right. Essentially what we're interacting with here.
It's weed, and they're laying on pallets in mud and listening to fucking knockoff Clearance Clearwater, and it's just like the vibes are bad. Like I wouldn't want to party there.
It's a bad vibe. The light is too high. There's too much light. It's bright in there. There's just like random couples and like threesomes happening on, again, just like dirty mattresses and pallets in what essentially is like an abandoned warehouse, I guess. And the center, the thing that apparently everyone is watching, is just a random girl dancing topless. That's what's happening. And I'm like, this is just, the vibes are bad. They're all passing joints, and they're treating it like I said, it's like it's a fucking opium den, right? And Carol starts making out with the two motorcycle boys, and then she like pops her boobies out, and then you think they're gonna have a whole big thing, and then Carol just like turns on him and is like, you're a fucking turd, and just like puts her joint out on his belly, which is a harsh thing to do. Like that's not what weed does. Like no one smokes weed and is like, I can't wait to like surprise someone by putting a joint out on them. Like it's just she really harshens the whole vibe even further. And then she just like bails out into the night, right? And when the two like biker kids decide like that wasn't cool, we're gonna go out there and like beat her up because we're cool guys or whatever, we're badass bikers. She's just wandering around in the woods at this point because she's got poo brains because she smoked too much grass, and she wanders into this just like swampy woods. This is one of my favorite scenes, and this is one of the reasons I picked this movie. Is this movie does a tremendous job of maybe the only one of my favorite examples of day for night. It just is creepy and dreamlike. Like they just pull it off in a way that makes everything seem very creepy and very dreamlike. Day for night in and of itself is kind of flawed, right? It never looks totally natural. But the way they play it off here, it looks better than most. But it also just, like I said, it feels very dreamlike, which is something I associate with Giallo.
Yeah, I think it also works because it's not, it isn't necessarily set up as like this is nighttime. Like
it's
this
like
could be, it could be twilight, so it like is okay, and that like kind of adds to the danger of like, well, the sun's still kind of up, but like we're just because we're in the woods. You can imagine like it's the cover of the trees and
there's mist. It's very misty as well. So it's like the temperature's dropping. So there's some fog about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like this is my favorite scene as well, just because also, and you mentioned it before we started on this film that, it's so inspirational for other things. And like in this scene, you can see how much of that can also be tied to like the Friday the 13th with the mist and the killer just appearing and disappearing, and also feels a bit like The Burning, just
very much so. And the stalking and the falling and the slipping in the elements and slipping in the mud, like how many times like that's become a full-on slasher trope, right? Like, no, I don't think that was happening in this capacity, before this movie. Or at least not as blatant, example of what is now a trope.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that considering that like this movie predates Black Christmas and Black Christmas predates Halloween. Mm-hmm. So like there's, the things that we consider, like the Western, I mean, they all happen at the same time because what Texas Chainsaw is 74, right?
Right.
So like, yeah, all of these movies kind of almost happen at the same time, but they don't necessarily influence each other, but they all go on to influence everything that comes after them.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And that's why I think of this movie as more of a direct influence on Halloween, Friday the 13th. You know, it's the, it's the young, in this instance, college students, kind of left to their own devices, getting high, and you get high and you get killed. You get high, right. You get drunk, you have sex, you end up killed. In the woods, you're fucking dead. You know what I mean? Like how familiar does all that sound? Right.
Right.
And then also just great sound design here as well. So I just love the sound design throughout this whole scene. So Carol starts to get the heebie-jeebies out in the woods. And at first you don't know if it's because she just has poo brains or what's happening. So you almost get this like paranoid. She starts to get paranoid and you start to get like paranoid with her, you're like, is she imagining this or is something really dangerous there? And then the killer pops out. I mean, like out of nowhere from behind a tree and just like scares her boobs out. Right. So she's like, and her boobs pop out. And then Carol gets strangled with this scarf that the killer's wearing and simultaneously drown in the mud. And it's like, it's a pretty brutal scene. And then she gets this whole like post-mortem torso massage before you get the killer's flashback to the dolls from the original, orgy scene. And then the killer gouges her eyes out as you see that he does with the dolls, or that somebody does with the dolls in his flashbacks. So he does the old like fingies in the eye sockets thing. Before he essentially like fucking butterflies her with a knife, kind of like the last victim. You don't know if he's treating them like dolls or inanimate objects, or you're not exactly sure what's happening, but you get this cool scene of like the blood going into the mud, which is kind of cool and just really an insanely impactful scene overall, and one that undoubtedly was super influential to like a lot of future slasher movies, as is some other scenes in this movie as well, but especially this one. And scenes like that happen early in movies always get more credit, more view. Like it's early on, so it's going to stand out. It's just going to stand out more because it's early in the movies. Like that's just a hallmark of the genre. But, everyone, you also get this thing of like everyone starts suspecting everyone else in terms of all the like co-eds. Danny suspects the motorcycle guys, which we saw crash, so we kind of know it wasn't them. And by the way, their name's Peter and George. It doesn't fucking matter. And then the killer calls and threatens Danny. And then you get these like really the only time cops really come into the picture too much in this movie, and they're questioning this creepy merchant that we were introduced earlier to. And you learn they're questioning about the scarf because they found the scarf at the scene of the crime. Oh, what's happening with the scarf? Do you have the scarf? Well, I did at one point, but I don't anymore. And then, he's like, I don't fucking know nothing, And then he was obviously lying because the first thing he does is go and call someone, just a random person on the phone, which we don't know who it is, and says like, basically, I know you killed somebody and give me the fucking, you got to give me some fucking money. So he does this whole like extortion thing with the person that he knows is the killer. So now you get back to, incel Stefano, and he's back at it with Danny. And then she remembers, like he's like harassing her, and she remembers him wearing that scarf. And he goes and tells Jane, and he's like, oh, it's Stefano. Stefano's the killer because he has the same scarf that the killer had, because the cops come in and like show the whole class, because this entire college consists of fucking one class apparently. And tells him the
gather them all together.
Yeah, they just like, there's a multi-purpose room that is like a cathedral, and I'm like, maybe that's how things are in Italy. I don't know.
but he showed them the scarf, so they kind of know apparently what happened with that scarf. The creepy merchant is run down pretty quickly for extorting the money from the killer, so you kind of see that coming. But he does this whole like his head gets smashed by the car, between a building, and it's a pretty unbelievable but like chaotic scene.
Yeah, it's unbelievable because there's a lot of squealing of tires on grass and mud. That's not how that works.
Also, like this little like fucking Italian car just like run, just fucking serpentine back and forth. You know what I mean? Or whatever it's called. Like don't just run and like stand against a wall. Like that's literally the only thing you could do that'll end up with you dying. But like, hey, whatever. He's a goofy guy.
Or just jump on top of the hood. It's not that hard. It's not that high of a jump.
It's not going fast. Climb a small tree. You'll be fine. But anyway, Jane goes to, the sensible thing, which is go see Stefano. But instead finds like a parrot and some dolls. So they're really setting up Stefano as the killer here. So he's a big red herring. Plus you see this like unfinished letter to Danny that says like she promised him something when they were children and suggests that, she had earlier suggested that he's been doing this for like 10 years. So you're like, they're really laying it on thick that Stefano is the guy, which you tells us as the audience is probably not the case. And then you start getting introduced to the shifty-eyed, like handsome creep around town who's like ogling Danny and on the train, and you're like, who's this motherfucker all of a sudden? And then it takes you like the fourth time you see the guy and you're like, should I know who this guy is? But ultimately you learn that he's a doctor.
Yeah, I think they mentioned he's a doctor once early in the scene with Carol and the shopper and the shopkeep. They do a good job of setting up the doctor as the other red herring because you see him buying the scarf. And then he also is in a doll shop, which I think Danny sees him through the window. Yeah, I think Danny sees him through the window at the doll shop. And then, but he's just generally a creep,
He's just creeping around. He's got shifty eyes. He's looking side to side, a lot. He's doing the thing that like Scooby-Doo bad guys do. But anyway, especially when the merchant, I think you're right. I think the merchant's the one who calls him like doctor something or whatever at some point. But yeah, this movie, we talked about like this movie should be called Male Gaze the Movie because it's just constantly every male human just like, I mean, it's not uncommon for the genre, but like the director goes to great lengths to just characterize Italian society as just like sex crazed, like like everyone, but the men are specifically like predatory. The women are like are like they're like virtuous women, and then there's women who are just like, asking for it. That's kind of like the message is like,
right,
these ladies are asking for it, which is like obviously very disconcerting, but that is the vibe the director really seems to be communicating. And that's why I mean, like, this movie is sleazy. It's like every woman is like a seductress and every guy is like a horn dog predator.
Yeah. Well, even the women who aren't being a seductress, like Jane, it doesn't matter. Or even just
a victim. Yeah, not even necessarily a seductress. That's probably not fair to characterize it that way. It's every woman is a would-be victim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you get examples of that with I don't know their names offhand, but the two women that accompany them to the villa, the black woman and her lover.
Yeah.
Like, they are definitely putting on a show when they're around the villagers and everything. Like
they are trying to attract attention to themselves and like sexual attention, very desperately trying to do that. The way the way they're just putting themselves in positions to try to attract attention. Yeah.
Right.
Or even like when they're not in the villa, like they're all constantly like sunbathing in the nude and like not, you know what I mean? Like it's super gratuitous.
Yeah. So you have those examples of them, but then you also have Jane, who really doesn't do anything like that at all. But the point is like, it doesn't matter how you behave because the Italian men are just going to be dangerous sex pests.
It doesn't matter. Right. You do get introduced to another red herring, which is Balak, which is the town incel shoemaker, who gets introduced, fairly far along. But he's cartoonish.
Yeah. Yeah. He's cartoonish. At no point do you think like he's the killer, but it's just funny because I had him and the bread and milk guy down as night simpleton and day simpleton. Because like that's just when they're like on shifts, like they're just the village idiot at different times of the day. Balak is the nighttime simpleton where like he comes out and he does creeps and pests and peeps, and then in the morning the daytime simpleton comes out and delivers your bread and milk.
With his fucking this little hat flipped up, but so the girls are gonna go up. You learn so like Anne, the couple that you mentioned, which I couldn't tell if they were a couple before they showed up or they just kind of had like that like interlude while they were there. But them and Carol, they're all gonna go on a basically a little girls' weekend up to a villa overlooking the entire town to celebrate the fact that, and Danny, to celebrate the fact that Flo was murdered. I'm not really sure why they're doing this. It seems inopportune time, but whatever. They're going to this little girls' weekend up on the mountain. Danny realizes that, at this point that Stefano wasn't the one wearing the scarf. Weirdly enough, so she's kind of like, oh, maybe it wasn't Stefano. But you have, you get cut back to town and you have like a rowdy, group of roving sexual predators that we were talking about. And one of the quotes I wrote down, they say all types of wild stuff, but one of them was, if I had a second with her, I'd knock her up. And then his friend goes, what do you got? Sperm vision? Like, sir. Nope. That doesn't make any fucking sense. You guys,
what do you got? Come eyes.
I think I just like, you want to walk up to this group of like scrawny little Italian, fucking, and just smack. You just want to smack them in the face. Like, shut up. You shut your goddamn mouth. You're not funny. You shut up.
Hey, what are you doing? We're on our way to Catcall, the musical.
Yeah, that's literally what they are. That's exactly what they're doing. So they're up at the villa. This killer is kind of peeping in on the girls, and you think it's Palak, because Palak is there, but there's two different peepings happening. You got the killer peeping, and then you also have Palak peeping, and then the killer flashes his knife at Palak, and he's like, "Beat it! This is my peeping spot." And Palak just like runs away, and then Palak, not everyone's gonna get. Palak looks like John from John and Kate plus 8. You remember that?
Okay.
Do you remember that? It was like an early reality TV show about this couple that had like octuplets. And he looks like him. He looks, and I was like, who does he look like? It took me a good half hour to realize who Palak looks like. Anyway, Palak, as you might expect, he gets killed and they fucking huck him down a well. So like, who fucking cares? He was a short-lived red herring. And like, you are just seeing, I haven't talked about it a ton, but the boobs per minute in this scene is unbelievable. You scarcely go 5 minutes without seeing boobs in this movie.
Pretty much.
It might be an all-time record.
It's I mean, they do a good pacing of boobage is what it is.
Yeah.
It's just like
it is. It's just like right when you forget that boobs exist, they show you them again. Hey, remember boobs? And you're like, oh yeah, all right.
Yeah. They'll do a scene of like, you know, important business, and then they'll do boobs is what it is. It's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's right.
Yep. This is a boob movie. We remember. So, you know, they're doing the whole girls night up there. Jane falls down the stairs and hurts her ankle. You know, the reason this becomes very important because they call the cops and they got this kid, right? He's a guy who they made arrangements with in town to every morning bring them fresh milk and bread for their town. Because when you think about a good, you know, I guess in 1973, you know, like Jules and like White Claws, the equivalent of Jules and White Claws was fresh bread and milk, I guess, for the girls' weekend. Because every morning they have this little dorky guy, the guy you mentioned as like, you know, the daytime moron. He's going to come up and deliver them fresh milk and bread. So you also have this shifty-eyed, you know, the handsome guy from the train we talked about. They say, you know, call the doctor, and they call him, and that's who it is, right? It's handsome, shifty-eyed guy. He comes up to see about Jane's ankle. Says it's hurt, but gives her just like pain meds. Have some pain meds, you'll be fine. You get some more like naked frolicking, and like Stefano is lurking about, and you're like, well, maybe it is Stefano. You're not quite sure. Jane decides that evening to have an old, you know, the Italian national pastime, which is pain meds chased with wine. So he has some booze, has some pain meds, and just passes the fuck out. So we don't know at this point, but the phone doesn't work. We learned the phone doesn't work, and the girls, sans Jane, because she's upstairs in a coma, are like hanging out downstairs, drinking, you know, doing whatever. And somebody buzzes at the door, and they're like, "Who's at the door?" Well, it's Stefano. They're like, "Oh, goddamn, it's Stefano. He's crazy." But Stefano's dead. Oh, no. And he like flops in. Somebody has killed him, and his corpse flops in the door. And then you kind of jump cut to the next morning, and you see someone burying Stefano in the garden in the morning. And then you see Jane, who's in the upstairs bedroom. Jane wakes up from, you know, her near-death experience the night before of mixing drugs and alcohol. And she limps down the stairs, and she finds the rest of the girls are all dead. Except for Danny. She's just mostly dead, and then quickly becomes dead. And then the killer, which we have obviously not seen the killer's face, rolls in with a hacksaw, starts dismembering the bodies as Jane kind of hides and like tries not to barf. And it's like a pretty intense scene. You know, it's a lot of like Jane close-ups of her like flop sweating and crying and trying not to be heard as the killer's like dismembering bodies with a hacksaw. The milk and bread guy shows up. He leaves it on the steps, which makes like for a great like suspenseful moment. Jane starts trying to signal people down in town with like a mirror, trying to get people's attention from the villa. And the only person that notices it is the shifty-eyed doctor, which at this point you're kind of convinced might be the killer. You're not sure. The phone doesn't work, obviously, so this is kind of her only method. But you're like, it's not the doc, because the doc was just down there and the killer was just the hoy up the mountain. So it seems unlikely that it's the doc. And we know it's not Stefano because he just got dead. Yeah. And it's not the creepy shoemaker. He got dead.
Right.
So now you're starting to like whittle down who's left, right?
Yeah. It's a matter of just like the editing not giving enough room to maintain the the belief that it's the doctor, because I feel like in this scene, like the killer knows Jane is still in the house, which is why he didn't kill her. And he's kind of just keeping her hostage.
Well, so this is kind of interesting because you kind of don't know it at one point, but so kind of here's what happens, right? The doc sees the distress signal and tries to call up to the villa, but the phone doesn't work. So you're like, okay, it's not the doc. But again, we know it's not Stefan. We know it's not the shoemakers. So like, we got a couple people in our head it could be. So the car, so we didn't talk about this earlier, but like Jane left her car to get washed at the service station, which I'm pretty sure is a service station from Blood and Black Lace.
Blood and Black Lace.
Was it? Yeah, earlier. And basically says like, hey, I'll come back and pick it up tomorrow or whatever. So he comes up with Jane's car while the guy's dismembering. Jane knocks down a chair and alerts the killer because she's like trying to look out the window, trying to get the attention of the guy who brought her car back. And the killer hears a noise upstairs, goes up to investigate. Jane hides in the closet. He doesn't find her, but he locks the door, which would suggest to us that he knows maybe something is up. But then, in another kind of suspense scene, he sees shoes on the steps, and he decides to come back and like look around a little bit. He's like, those shoes belong to somebody whose body I'm not seeing here, right? And then the doctor comes back up the mountain because he's like he's treating somebody else who lives on the mountain. It's this like kind of slightly comical scene, and he like pulls over. He gets rear-ended by this truck and then just like flees the scene of the accident.
That accident looks so real. Like I mean,
it looks like they actually did like a little fender bender there. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, did they just leave the actors in that car and just plow into it? Like, I don't
plow into it with a fucking truck, like a box truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It didn't seem staged. It seemed like a real little weird fender bender. Because he like drives up the back of this, because he's driving like a Volkswagen Beetle, He like drives up the back of this Beetle. But anyway, we are getting like doll flashbacks and stuff, but ultimately the doc goes up and like talks to the people at the service station because he wants to get his car fixed. And then that's when he's like, whose car's that? Oh, that's the other girl who's up there and she hasn't got her car and yada yada. So now he's like, well, she might be up there in trouble. So some time is passing here, and it's kind of a vague passing of time that's happening because the killer has essentially went back down to town, and he had locked that door up there, but he didn't find anybody. So he was kind of unsure whether somebody was there or not. He had found 3 bodies. He had cut up 3 bodies, three other girls, or 4 other girls, I think. 3 other girls, I guess. But then the thing that tips him off is when he's down in the town and he hears a roving band of perverts say like, hey, there was 8 boobs and butts, and he's like saying all this perv stuff about how many girls were up there. And that is kind of tips him off to say, oh, no, there's a 4th girl up at the villa that was unaccounted for. So, which is kind of a cool little reveal, honestly. And like, that's kind of what like gives her away. But the doc heads up to inspect things after the whole car situation at the service station. And then you get this great scene. And probably my favorite scene in the movie, aside from the woods, kill early on. So Jane has been locked in the room, and she's trying to like get people's attention, whatever. She has no way to escape. She's got a fucked up ankle. She tries to do this little trick with a newspaper where she tries to basically the key was left in the other side of the door that locked her in. So she's trying to knock that key out of the other side of the door, but put a newspaper down, slid under the door so it catches the key, and then she can slide the key back under the door to her side of the door. So it's kind of an interesting little trick. She's doing this, and as she's doing it, the killer is watching her from the other side of the door and sees what she's doing, which is like alarming to the viewer already. And then she knocks the key out, and the key misses the newspaper. So you're partly like, oh no, her plan didn't work, but also the killer is watching the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And the killer, toying with her, puts the key on the newspaper without her knowing. So she thinks she's been successful in her little trick. And then she opens the door and is immediately attacked. And big reveal, it's Professor Dickweed from earlier. It's
Professor
Franz, yeah. And he explains in the most Giallo explanation ever that he had to do all the killings because they're all just dolls and she's different and yada yada and just like real crazy guy stuff. But the professor, here's why this happened. The professor saw his little pervert brother fall to his death while trying to retrieve a doll for a girl when they were little kids. Now all girls are bad.
Yes. Now all girls are bad. And then it's Carol and Flo were blackmailing him.
Correct. So you're like, oh, so he saw his brother die, so that's why he killed everyone. That's a little flimsy. But then he also goes on to explain that he and Carol and Danny were having doll orgies. And and they're blackmailing him. And they were making fun of him for wanting to have doll orgies and being all fucked up. And then that made him mad. And he killed him.
Yeah.
So they have a big fight scene that's like kind of rules. And like the fucking doc just rolls in right at the nick of time when like he's about to kill Jane, and they have a big old fight scene, and there's fucking drop kicks, fucking European uppercuts, like the whole 9 yards. Like they're really going at each other. And then eventually a knife comes out, and they're fighting like for a long time, like out the door, down the fucking hallway, out through the barn. They're on like the side of the cliff of the villa, and the knife comes out. Someone goes off the cliff, and you're not sure who. And then, and then you see somebody walking back through, and this is actually a really gutsy shot that's actually pulled off really well, because you have this like very dimly lit shot from the opposite side of like a barn. Yeah. And you just heard someone fall off a cliff, and you've got Jane, and she's trying to determine who fell. Was it was it Doc, who, was coming to save her, or was it Professor Dickweed, who was about to kill her? Because one means she's safe and one means certain death. And he falls off the cliff, and then you see someone walking in, and they shoot it in such a way where it actually looks like it's Professor Dickweed for a second, but it's actually the Doc. And as he comes closer, and I actually rewound this scene because I was like, wait, did they show the professor walking back in and then cut and show the doctor? But no, just the way that they lit it and what they're wearing, it's very ambiguous at first. And then you learn that it is, you learn that it is the Doc, and happy music plays. And then they make some comment about, how he came back because of chance or fate or both because of the car accident. And then fucking Professor Dickweed said that this whole ordeal with his pervert brother falling off a cliff and him being crazy was all because of chance or fate or both or whatever. So hey, chance or fate or both exists. Like, I guess is the final sentiment or whatever. So, and that's it. And then the credits roll.
It's Italian scripts explaining things away.
Yeah.
Two things I wanted to mention that we just kind of glossed over. One, back to the accident. The truck driver, he gets out and he's just cursing the doctor up and down. But the scene ends perfectly because as the doctor drives away, he's just like, get my license plate, fucker. And then drives away. And then the truck driver ends it with a, hey, yo.
Yeah, hey, yo, what the fuck is fucking guy over here?
I was like, oh, wait, real Italians do that?
Yeah, it's the most Italian scene of all time. Yep. He's like, hey, I don't give a fuck. Hey, where you fucking going? Where you think you're fucking going?
Where you going? You're leaving the scene of an accident. Hey, yo.
Hey, yo.
The other is, why does Jane have a French car with Chicago plates in Italy?
I have no fucking idea. Well, Jane is American.
Right.
So you want me to explain it? Here it is. Jane obviously comes from money. Her parents, she's from Chicago originally.
Sure.
Her dad is a fucking, Francophile and bought a French car for her and then brought it over and she drove it around during college, and then he shipped it over to her to drive while she was studying abroad. Bingo, bango, bongo. There it is.
I know it's a simple explanation. It's just annoying that somebody would be
stupid. It's very
so rich to have a French car shipped over to America, put Chicago plates on it, and then ship it back to Italy to drive a French car in Italy. To drive
twice across the fucking ocean. Yeah.
For a shitty Peugeot too. It's not like a cool one. She's not driving something awesome.
It's something shitty that any like fucking anyone, little tiny compact car anybody would drive.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like a lot of this film. It doesn't take as much, like Tenebrae has a lot of like brain power you have to try to expend, and like it will also come up fruitless to expend that power because you need things explained, like all that flashback shit with the red shoes and the woman getting killed. You'll think yourself brain dead trying to figure that out before the ending. Most of this is like pretty straightforward, and then the my brother fell down is just like a hat on a hat.
It sucks. It doesn't suck. I appreciate it in its contrived laziness.
Yeah.
Like this is just like the thing that I find most interesting and intriguing about this movie is you see the blueprints of Western slashers in it. You just see the reflection of what is going to become Western slashers so prominently in this movie.
Right. But you see all that blueprint stuff. And just for me, like the brother falling down, hat on a hat stuff is not stuff you need to understand, because it more just hinges on the blackmail of he had to kill Flo and Carol because they were blackmailing him. And then Danny saw him with the scarf. So he had to kill Danny, but Danny was in the villa with all the other girls. So like
I think they had to make him crazy. It doesn't take
as much brain power as Tenebrae.
I think they had to make him crazy for some reason, and then they went back and just shoved in all the doll stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's probably what happened. Yeah, this is like a fairly brainless slasher, but I just think like they did some things that are really unique for the time.
Oh yeah.
And were frankly like pretty brutal. And then it came to this movie. I'm not saying this movie is solely responsible, but I do think it is among the movies that are most responsible for what ultimately became the major tropes in modern, American slasher movies.
For sure.
but that doesn't make it, a perfect movie. But I think that it makes it far more, influential than the other two movies.
It's like it's almost kind of like an archaeological expedition in the way like you kind of dust away at something and then you start seeing the gem that's buried, and you see so you see the things like the wood scene, and the wood scene is obviously so influential on everything that comes after it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can dust away those parts and see those great things, but then also there's like just all that towny stuff fucking just.
But it's so entertaining. Like, we didn't even talk about like the dumb scene where they just like the girls, like the new, sexy ladies who come into town to join the sexy lady party on top of the mountain.
I know.
They just like ride a tractor.
Yeah.
Why do they come in and get a tractor? We didn't even talk about that. It's so silly. It is just like, obviously, like our sensibilities on this stuff, like for anybody who's listened to the show for any amount of time understands that our sensibilities are a little different on this stuff, because I am just like, it's just dumb entertaining. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
Like sexy ladies could ride the tractor like that. That satisfied me for that portion of the movie. It didn't have to have anything to do with anything. And like, I guess I don't expect much out of a movie like this in terms of like really being, clever with the plot or whatever.
Mm.
I mean,
it already set itself up in the first 10 minutes of just being sleaze and having poop jokes and nudity and, violence. So like, when it comes to sexy lady tractor ride and like perverts down by the river. Yeah. Okay. It's like, it makes sense. It's just, but also
you're checking all the boxes, Steve. You're checking all the boxes we need.
I just don't know if I think that makes it better than the other films is all.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Well, let's establish this. Okay. For those of you who are listening at home that have stuck with us through this marathon episode here, you may have noticed we lost Sarah. She is having internet connection issues, we believe. So we've lost her. She's not able to reconnect for whatever reason. So how do you want to go about doing this?
Yeah. So I guess it just becomes a question of like, are we both voting Tenebrae? Because then if we are, then Sarah would win.
Yeah. So
are you voting Tenebrae is like the question.
I think I'm voting Tenebrae. Yeah. Okay. I think I am. Okay. As much as I like Blood and Black Lace, and as much as I've like watched that movie a lot, I think Tenebrae, the thing that puts Tenebrae over the edge for me is the ending. Mm-hmm. Like, there are parts of this movie where, like, if it would have had a more pedestrian ending and it was just like, or even if it was like, oh, it was the interviewer, or it was the author, and that was it, I might have had a harder decision to make. But because of the just batshit nature of the ending, which I love, I think I have to go Tenebrae, even though I don't think it's as artfully made as a movie. I don't think it's as well shot of a movie. I think it has a couple of really memorable performances, and it has its own kind of unique style. And then when you got a quote unquote twist ending at the end, where essentially the main protagonist of the movie is the killer, then that killer is proven to have tricked everybody with
he has a backup plan.
Pee-wee Herman novelty joke shop toy, then kills another cop, then is accidentally shish kebabbed with a piece of art. Like, it is just so bonkers. What is the movie? Oh, it's like, it honestly reminds me of Pieces, the ending of Pieces, where you're like,
where is this going? Wait, what? How? Why? You know, you're just like shell shocked in the most silly way. This is what that reminds me of. And I think for that reason, I got to go with Tenebrae.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll be going with Tenebrae as well, because like I like Torso. It's not my favorite. And I just like I was already saying, it has that uncut diamond quality about it, of like there's a lot of good in it, and you can see how it's the precursor of a lot of Western slasher films, but Tenebrae feels like it takes the best parts of my film and your film, in that it makes the entire world dangerous. It makes most of the men perverts and dangerous in some way. They're either sleazy or dangerous. You have clandestine meetings. You have weird dream-like things happening. It's not. You have some of the kind of colorful garishness, you know, especially as it relates to like the red shoes and the blood, but it's not as overstated as in like other films. Like, it's interesting. Like, this film is as muted as it is, considering Inferno was the film Argento did right before this in 1980. And Inferno is still one of those wildly colorful, you know, wacky films. So, but yeah, Tenebrae just kind of mixes everything of the Giallo subgenre into it, of like Black Hand Killer, straight razor, you know, carrying on, fucking, you know, wild architecture. So
I don't think I like, so like I picked Torso, you know, a little inside baseball, why I picked this over Bird with the Crystal Plumage or a couple other movies that I had on the list, even like Bay of Blood, right? Is like Torso just felt like a more horror movie. And then all the influences got me all excited and talking about those. So that's why I picked it. Like, I genuinely like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, maybe even Blood and Black Lace, definitely Deep Red. I like them all more than I like Torso, but I was like, this Giallo as a subgenre to me can really hinge on like, it doesn't feel like horror all the time. You know what I mean? Like, right. I'll go back to, we were talking about the top of the show. Like, you know, I've been reading the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. There's tons of pure horror in that, but nobody would say overall that is, not nobody, but like, it's not pure horror,
right?
In the sense that some of his other stuff is. So like Torso is pure horror. There's no arguing that. Blood and Black Lace, Bird with the Crystal Plumage, like you could argue like most of it feels more like a thriller whodunit mystery type of thing than a lot of other movies, which pulled me away from it, you know. And Tenebrae, the reason I didn't pick Tenebrae is I honestly didn't remember liking it that much when I watched it before. Like, I've seen it before, and I honestly think the last couple times I watched it, this is a lame excuse, but I think the last couple times I watched it, I fell asleep before the ending because I forgot how bonkers the ending was. Like, watching it this time was really a surprise where I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is so much more than I remembered. And then when I saw the ending, I was like, fuck, I wish I would have picked that movie.
I mean, the last 15 minutes is so extreme because he's cutting the woman's hand off. He's axe murdering that woman, axe murdering one cop, axe murdering another cop, killing himself. Like, it's just a constant barrage of insanity. So, yeah, I don't know that, like I said, like, I think Blood and Black Lace is a better representation of Giallo than Tenebrae is. Bird with a Crystal Plumage or Deep Red, maybe I would have voted for those. You know, I think I think I definitely like those over Tenebrae. I just think Tenebrae is a little bit better representation than Torso, because like you're saying, Torso is like a pure horror and, you know, just about a slasher film. But I think the Giallo genre is more about being a whodunit thriller with the clandestine meetings and the, you know, blackmail and, you know, just kind of everything. Everybody has a motive. Everybody's dangerous. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, what that leads us to is, hey, Sarah, for this and for the second month in a row, the guest has taken down the Showdown. They're taking that son of a bitch and strap home for the month. Steve, we got to get our shit together is what we've come to establish.
Gotta stop splitting votes.
I know, we got to stop fucking around here. Anyway, I guess I want to thank Sarah Elizabeth Jackson, Reanimated Nerd on the IGs, on the social medias, for joining us. Unfortunately, like I said, with some technical difficulties that she wasn't able to finish the episode with us, but regardless, did take home the fucking W on this month's Showdown episode. So we will circle back around with Sarah about potentially a punishment episode, if you will, for us for later in the month. And then Brandon Getz, who is our guest for December, who won. Steve, did you mention? I think you mentioned he had a potential punishment episode for us as well. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, he's already picked his movie, and he would like to do House 2.
Oh yes.
So later in this month, we'll do that kind of makeup punishment episode. Considering we did a whole bunch of holiday programming for December, we'll do a makeup punishment episode with Brandon for House 2, and probably finish out the month with who knows what, you know. There's a movie I want to see. It's called All Neighbors Must Be Destroyed with Alex Winter and Gianuary. It's coming to Shudder. I think that it looks like a lot of fun, so maybe we might do that. Maybe not. Who knows? We'll see.
Now the House franchise, I have the original House on VHS. I haven't watched it in a minute. House 2, because House and House 2 both have Cheers cast members in them.
Yes.
One's got John. Is House 2 the one with John Ratzenberger?
I believe House 2 is the one with John Ratzenberger, because George Wendt is in House 1.
Okay, I couldn't remember if George Wendt was in 1 and John Ratzenberger was in 2, or vice versa, because it has been a little while since I've seen House, and honestly, those movies blend together for me a little bit. I know some people are like, I like both of them. They're both just fun, batshit nonsense, fucking haunted house monsters and crazy demons and shit in the house. It's a lot of fun, but I could not remember which one. But I know they each have independently 2 different cheer stars. Anything else that we should mention here before we sign off from this marathon discussion?
No. Kane Hodder plays a gorilla in House 2.
Oh, hell yeah. We're going to have a lot to talk about. All right. For the Halloween is Forever crew, I'm Brian.
And I'm Steve.
All right. We'll see you next time. Okay, bye.
Bye.